Back again, 101 times in a row, just to annoy Josh.
I'm immune to it now, man.
I don't think you are. I don't think you are. I'll test it. I'll at least test it.
It still gets to me. So this is like coming full circle, so to speak. Welcoming James back to the show. He was the second show for those of you guys who have been around since the beginning, which is at least one or two of you.
That's what we should have done. We should have had people just replay the list.
It's too late now.
Now we're 99 off. We could have been 100.
No. We talked about for like 3 weeks. What should we do for episode 100? What should we do for episode 100? And we had all these ideas, and they were all a lot of work. So we were like, we can't do that. It's too much work. So we ended up basically doing nothing.
It'd be cool if you guys did more kind of live remotes from events.
Yeah, we like that. Yeah. We're going to do more of that. The problem is both of us have been hermits for the last few months, so we haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
We're going to have to change that up.
Yeah, it's too cold. It's too cold where you guys live to even go outside.
That's part of it, man.
That's extremely true.
Yeah.
Also, the entire city of Boston's under construction during the winter, so you can't go anywhere anyway.
My understanding was the entire city of Boston was under construction all the time.
It is. Well, especially during the winter. You know, they try to save it for when the roads are almost impassable anyway to do all the construction, so you really can't get anywhere unless you have a helicopter. So it's a lot of fun being here this time. Anyway, we wanted to get you back on the show for a few months now. We finally got an opportunity. You know, there's been so much stuff going on, James, and I'm actually psyched that you're on because I know you're going to have a lot of opinions about a lot of the stuff that's going on. But before we get into that, I do want to say that we have some more cool news about the USA team sponsorship program that USAF and NAP and UAL have all contributed in some way. So UAL and NAP are going to be participating events, so you can use your cards at all those events too. And USAF is sending us a donation. So, you know, AAA did, USAA did, and USAF did. So all three of the major organizations are behind this. So there's no reason for you guys to save your little pennies, sign up, donate some money.
It's a good program. I like that. It's a very good idea.
Yeah, we figured someone should try something, you know.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Kudos to you guys for doing it, for being proactive.
Well, we were the stupid ones to do it. That's basically what it comes down to. You know how it is with us. You know, we did just fall off the turnip truck.
Well, you know, you have to be an idealist if you're going to make something change, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Very true. And to be able to program a website, you got to be able to do that too.
Yeah, don't forget it, and I'm out. Yeah.
I'm a supervisor.
How much trouble I had figuring out Skype. So.
Josh is the idea guy. He's messaging me every once in a while. He's like, "Hey, can we do this?" And I'm like, "Give me a day. I'll figure it out."
That's basically exactly what happens.
John's like, "Oh boy."
It's the truth. I try to come up with ways to irritate him on a regular basis, and so far I haven't run out, and it's been 101 episodes. So we'll see how long it goes on for. Anyway, James, give us your opinion of the state of the sport right now in this country.
Well, I've been out of the sport now for almost 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to stay in contact because obviously I have so many friends that I met along the way in the past 20 years. So I do try to stay in contact and keep somewhat abreast of what's going on. But I've been so out of the loop. I mean, I read an article recently about the WAL suing Rockwell.
Yeah, that turned out it was a almost 2-year-old article, so that was already resolved.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. It was just sort of making the rounds.
Yeah, I got suckered into that one too.
I see the UAL is, I don't know, coming back, I guess. It's
Yeah, they've had their first event. They're back to a certain extent that, Robert Drank's not involved. He sold it to Bill Collins, so Bill Collins is running it along with NAP and USAF, so he's keeping himself busy.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, Bill's always keeping himself busy, though.
That's very true.
Bill's one of those guys that you can really count on, rely on. He's one of those guys who's, been there for the long haul, and usually if it's a situation where Bill commits to it, you can pretty much count on it.
Agreed.
So it's good that he's in charge of that.
Speaking of being able to count on people, you did hear correctly that WAL is coming back. I don't know if you heard the format, so I'll tell you quickly that the rumored format is that it's going to be on a major cable network, not a sports TV network, and that it's going to be a super match format, and they're going to select their athletes and have sort of like, we don't know what the exact details are, obviously, because it's still mostly a rumor, but something along the lines of Armors, except here in the States.
Okay.
What do you think?
So, well, I always liked Neil's idea with Armors. I kind of understood the 6-round battles too, just so if you had a 3-3, you could build up suspense for a rematch.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times we want to see a definitive winner.
True.
Did they talk about what the format's going to be? Is it going to be a 6-match or?
I don't think. They haven't. First of all, basically the only thing that we know is happening is that some of the biggest arm wrestling stars have gotten phone calls from Steve Kaplan saying this is what's happening, this is who's backing it, this is who's funding it. It's going to be super match format, and it's going to be announced later this year. So that's all we know.
Well, one of the things that I know about a lot of arm wrestlers is, they're going to follow the money, they're going to follow the TV. They're going to follow whoever promises to make them rich and famous, which has yet to happen for an arm wrestler, but they're going to follow it. And, for me, I don't know, man. I'm one of those people who I'm very careful about who I follow,
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of very upset people over what happened in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a bunch of people that are upset that bad. You know what I mean?
And that's unfortunate.
That's super unfortunate.
It really is. It's unfortunate. Not saying that they have to stay in a place of upset, but you have to stand for something.
Right, and learn a lesson of some kind.
Be a person of unilateral virtue. Don't just sacrifice your principles just because, this time it'll be different. Don't worry about that flight that, you paid for and the hotel you paid for that tournament that didn't happen. This time will be different.
Yeah, and the qualification through regionals and all that stuff. It was a process to get to that event.
Yeah.
Not that it shouldn't have been, but man, to have it canceled at the end is something else.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like no matter what you're selling a service. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And if you're selling a service, the whole point of it is to make sure that your customer or your participants, that they leave happy or fulfilled, or at least that you hold up your end of the bargain. I mean, I get that problems happen. Problems happen with my business. I mean, there's times where things come up. There's times when there has to be last-minute cancellations and such. But I'm going to make sure that I do my best so that my client who comes in is not upset by it, whether it's I have to give them a pro bono session or something. It's just about, I don't know. I mean, principles got to stand for something. And
let's talk about that for a minute, because John and I both agree with you on that. But Chris Gabi just posted that your rigid integrity has no place in the sport, and I want to comment. I want to bounce off that comment.
Right.
Here's what I think about that. What I think about that is that what I think Steve Kaplan is going to do is say, fuck all that. I'm going to find some loud, brash, interesting people of varying skill levels and put them on TV and try to turn them into stars. And the last thing that he's going to be concerned about is the integrity of the sport, of the rules, or anything else. And it's going to be an attempt to do whatever he needs to do to make it popular. I mean, we saw them do arm wrestling tournaments in an abattoir in a Game of Arms, so I expect it'll be similarly splashy.
Well, Well, I think on some level Chris is right, though. I mean, I stopped trying to force my principles on people years ago. Mm-hmm. I was probably a little bit too self-righteous in the way that I did it. I realized that what you say isn't going to change people. I mean, the right people, if they're going to be changed by you at all, they're going to be changed by the example that you set. And, I mean, look, I mean, there's elements of what the UAL provided. There's elements of what the WAL provided or / provides that people are attracted to. I'm not one of those people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's just kind of where I stand. I mean, it's okay if other people are. It's just not me. But I think we talked about this last time about, I'm somewhat of a purist, and I know in order to be a purist, you also have to have fairly rigid ideals, and, tradition has to be important to you. Mm-hmm. And if it isn't today in the sport, then that's fine. It's not for me. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, it's been 6 years since I've really been involved. I'll pull a tournament now and again just because it's fun, mm-hmm. just to see where I'm at, and that's it.
Yeah, me and Josh talked about that last week a bit, and I came to that same conclusion, which is like, well, maybe it's just not for me, and that's not coming from like I'm just giving up thing. It's just but I'm all right with that if that's the way it is, and that's the way it is. But like you said, you're more of a purist when talking about maintaining the rules and the integrity of the sport, and I mean that by integrity, maybe not even personal integrity. I think I said on the show before, I used to play basketball when I was a young boy. There was a very rigid set of rules. I had to show up for practice at a certain time every week, and I used to play every single day, and I was 9. I was able to maintain more professionalism than what was maintained by what happened in that league. And, it seems it's hard for me to think that the sport should become less professional because it's too hard. It's pretty damn simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there's not many rules, really.
Well, it's that all of that brings up all kinds of interesting points, and we mentioned this briefly on the show last week, which is that at the end of the day, this community of arm wrestlers of 10,000 of us or whatever it is, we basically have almost no impact on the ratings of any program or any show. So why would Steve Kaplan or anybody trying to make arm wrestling a big sport give a shit what we think when it comes right down to it?
I don't know. I think we've all seen plenty of Steve Kaplans and Robert Drinks, come and go. If you're in the sport long enough, you'll see that happen, and they don't get so much of a return on their investment, and then they go.
Yeah.
And they leave. And then, arm wrestling goes back to the bars for a while and the ballrooms, and then the next thing comes up. And
there's always the next thing.
and honestly, the WAL endured longer than I thought it would. Mm-hmm. I really was actually somewhat impressed with how it endured. As somebody who didn't participate really. I mean, I was at the WAL Chicago. I can't even remember the year.
Right, I remember.
Yeah, but I did some announcing there with John Milne.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even recall if I met Steve Kaplan, to be honest with you. I think he was there, but I don't recall if I met him. I don't know the man. I really don't know the man. And, I really can't comment on him.
Yeah.
But, what he's trying to accomplish, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I mean, I know he's got his hand in a lot of different businesses, and the majority of them are very successful. So you can see why he might be irritated by the fact that WAL, although it achieved a modicum of, definitely more than a modicum of success from our point of view. I mean, in terms of the larger audience of the world, they at least saw WAL on ESPN, and a couple million people watched it. So it certainly was more successful than other recent attempts. But if you were him, and he's part owner of an NBA basketball team, and he's producing movies and television shows, he's used to a higher level of success. So it doesn't completely surprise me that he's trying to figure out a way to make it successful. And I honestly think that this idea that he has is probably much more likely to be interesting to the average person without having to watch a tournament, just see two people basically arm fight.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think if it's not really reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, it's very much what Neil Pickup has done on Eurosport for a long time. I think if you do that, I think if you cut out all of the setup, that was one of my issues with the old ESPN shows too, is like they show all the, nobody wants to stand there and watch people set up, right? I mean, unless you're an arm wrestler, you're going to have no interest in that.
Right.
But just kind of cutting to right when the match is going to start and really kind of do, I know this is just me, but, you know, and this is the journalist in me, but, you know, one of the things that I found when I used to write for a living was that pretty much everyone's story is interesting if you get the genuine story. You know, the reason why I think so many reality shows fail or unscripted shows fail is because people can see the acting. You know, it just comes across very disingenuous. But if you ask the right questions, you know, anybody's story will become interesting. I mean, it's what I do for a living now. So much of what I do as a therapist is to try to understand people. Right. If I can understand them, then I can help them. I can help them help themselves. So a lot of what I do is I spend time listening, trying to understand what motivates them, what you know, what their intentions are, going from there, what they're about, what they believe, what their core beliefs are. And I really feel like if you do that with arm wrestlers, the most interesting people that I have met in my life have been arm wrestlers. You know, and I think if you can put that, if you can translate that into a television show and show the action, you know, I think it would really go over pretty well. I could be wrong. I mean, what the hell do I know?
I think you have a good point because I mean, you know, UFC does that with embedded and all that kind of stuff. They follow the fighters around for X amount of time, and you know, and honestly, one-on-one competition makes that a whole lot easier because you don't have to go who's going to finish in top 4, or you don't have to film the tournament and then film all the stuff afterwards and pretend like it was before. You know, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You can say, no, these two guys are gonna arm wrestle. These are the two guys we focus on. You know, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. And I like that idea. It just, I don't know, like, even like the work that I did on Vendetta, you know, I mean, I felt like the interviews could have been managed differently. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's just sort of the, you know, trying to translate somebody else's language to English in a very monotone way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, at the end, trying to get some perfectly canned, you know, cocky trash talk out of them. It's so generic and old and cliche at this point.
Yeah.
The only sports interviews that are fun to watch are Marshawn Lynch and Bill Belichick, because they just they don't give a fuck. They're just like, they say whatever they want, and it's just hilarious.
I will say this though, as somebody who used to be in the position of some of those reporters, some of Belichick's stuff would be sort of cringeworthy for me. I started empathizing with the reporters, and I'm like, oh God. You know, it's just one of those things, you know, you're not going to always ask perfect questions, right?
Right.
And if you ask the wrong question to Bill Belichick, he's going to...
I think it's funny. You know what I hope they do with this show? I hope they reach out to like Pushkar and say, dude, come over here. We'll put you on American television. Pull Dave Chafee. You know, we're going to open this series with you guys as the main event. I think that would be amazing. I mean, he's got the money to do it. I know they get paid in PAL, but, you know, he has money that he could completely eclipse PAL if he wanted to. And it would be fun to see them get some, because Pushkar is an interesting guy. He looks interesting. You need a translator and everything, but he has an interesting way of speaking. He has an interesting voice. He's gigantic. Yeah. And Chafee is too. I mean, it's the perfect story. The guy works in a prison with the most dangerous people around for a living. You know what I mean? He's gigantic. He's a good father.
A genuinely nice, gentle guy.
Exactly. He's like, it's perfect. So you can see the story being sold very easily.
Side note about Pushkar, and I know a little bit something about hand strength. Pushkar's grip, when you shake his hand, is it feels like a cinder block.
Yeah.
I actually stopped him and I said, wait a second, we got to do this again. And I shook his hand. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just sort of like, there's something wrong there. There's just something not human about your hand.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, Pushkar, but you're so strong. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Chernobyl, because I held hands with Pushkar and Oleg Zok over in Bulgaria. Yeah, it was really sweet. It was a sweet moment. But Zok's hand is actually bigger and stronger and more brick-like than Pushkar's. Because I grabbed Pushkar's and I had the same thought you did. Because I had pulled with Chafee, and I was like, Jesus, this guy's hand is gigantic. And then Pushkar was even more so. Yeah. And then Oleg Zok, his hand, man, it's just like you feel like you're being grabbed by an alien. First of all, his fingers are all 8 inches long.
Yeah.
And his hand is literally as thick as a brick. It's just crazy.
I know. It's like, I saw him, like he was walking actually with Pushkar, and I'm doing like the Frankenstein here. I'm sorry. That's so intentional. But he was walking with Pushkar in the hotel in Vegas, and, he had the big, long E.T. fingers.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like Edward Scissorhands.
I know. It's crazy, man. Yeah. That guy's got superpowers for our sport.
Yes.
We talk about arm locks and that kind of stuff, but he's unbeatable. I don't think anyone will ever beat him left-handed at his weight ever again.
I've seen people say that about other guys, and there's always someone. Someone always comes along.
Maybe. I mean, you see how he handles people like
I know.
Babayev and Andreev and stuff like that. It's
he can go up in weight and he can still just absolutely punish the best guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy, man.
I mean, you guys know you're in this sport long enough, and freaks emerge.
Yep.
I mean, absolute freaks emerge, and you're just like,
I know. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, then you're like, well, who can beat this guy? I don't think anyone will ever beat this guy. And then they do.
Somebody does. Yeah, you're right. Somebody always comes along.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 7 billion people in the world, so there might be some guy out there who's even more of a mutant.
Well, the thing is, it takes this combination, right? That's what's so cool about the sport in general, physical and mental. It takes a combination to make the very best. And some guys usually have either unbelievable physical ability or this natural technical ability. And then unless you mend the two, you're not going to ever really overcome, because the guy who's super, super, super strong loses. Yeah. And he gets his ass kicked to the one thing that he doesn't, pay attention to enough. And the technical guy never gets strong enough to beat the super, super, super strong guy who has a little bit of technique. This is no different than mentality. When somebody.
So how would you beat Zok? What do you think someone who's somewhere around 80 kilograms would need to do to beat Zok, lefty?
Oh,
well, they would have. I think they'd have to turn him under somehow. I mean, that's a hell of a.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I mean, somehow you got to turn his palm up. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, good luck, but.
Hey, it'll happen. Someone will catch him.
You're right.
You're not going to hit every go just right. I mean, there's going to be times where you get caught.
Mm-hmm.
John brought up MMA before. Somebody else gets caught. They always get caught in their career. Everybody does, right?
That's true.
So.
It seems like that happens less in our sport than it does in, say, MMA.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a little bit, when it comes down to certain people and certain styles, it's a little bit more predictable than MMA is.
You can see, though, if you look at like somebody's MMA record, they're not going to arm wrestle as many. I mean, they're not going to compete in as many matches as an arm wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, you can retire with 3 or 4 losses or something like that, whereas in arm wrestling, I mean, even the best guys are going to lose 50 times.
Right.
They're going to stay in the sport long enough, they're going to lose.
Yeah, it's a volume, right? The volume of matches that we have. It's almost like amateur wrestling. Where you seek out competition. It's a bit different. We don't pull 3 or 4 times a year normally. You go to a tournament and you might pull, 3 or 4 times an arm just that day. Yeah. And that's just one tournament. And And much like amateur wrestling, you can win. You can go undefeated in terms of tournament bracket and all that stuff. But no, you got points against him. He lost. You got pins and stuff like that. It's same thing with fighting. They might not lose matches, but they lose rounds.
Right,
It's for us. We can get pinned and still win a tournament. That's the beauty of it, right?
Sure, and there's always going to be those sort of extenuating circumstances, those unintended consequences. You get in that long match, and and then somebody's sitting there licking their chops, waiting for you, and you never know. It could be you have to pull them within 2 minutes, and if you're not conditioned to pull 2 minutes after you pull the long match, there's a lot of people you can lose to.
Oh yeah,
that's true
for sure. I mean, number 1 and 2, they pull each other first round in a tournament. Guess what? Third place probably gonna win.
It's possible.
We've all seen it happen.
Well, actually,
we've had those matches where we walked in and we were expected to win a tournament. Somebody's really good in your class, even if it's a bigger class, and you end up having a war with that person. And then there's that other guy that's just sitting there who knows? Maybe they got knocked into the loser's bracket early or something.
Yep.
And, they come back up, they got a fresh arm, you don't, and, no excuses, but you lose.
No, it is what it is. And that's the difference between super match and tournament, right? Like I was thinking about that, and it's like a brick wall. Right? In a tournament, you start at the bottom, and you have to put those bricks on perfectly. Otherwise, when you get to the top, it's going to fall over. If you don't get through that tournament really efficiently and straight and smooth, it can be bad near the end. But when it's a super match, you want to get the biggest hammer you have and smash it right at the top. You don't really care necessarily if it's pretty. I just want to knock the wall down because I only got to deal with one wall. I don't have to deal with a bunch of bricks,
Yeah.
And that's why arm wrestling sometimes feels like, depending on the format, it almost feels like a different sport.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to be able to train for a couple of sprints, and other times you got to be able to, hang in for marathons. It's not always the easiest sport to train for or to peak for.
It's, Chafee was bringing that up about, the last successful WAL when he ended up losing to Michael Todd. He said, I beat Mike twice. And anywhere else, that would have been enough. But
yeah, he's right. Yeah, I mean, in anywhere else, that would have been enough. But it's the format.
It is the format. Yeah. So did you get a chance to see The Last Vendetta?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Chafee, he looked incredible. He really dominated Trubin very easily. Trubin wasn't in any of the matches and ended up pulling out.
I did actually see that. Yeah, that actually surprised me. It really did. I mean, I shouldn't say anything Dave does surprises me, but that actually surprised me. I mean, as technical an arm wrestler Trubin is, with the level of his hand and his back pressure, and I really thought he give Dave a little bit more.
Yeah.
Matches, I didn't see them all, but the matches I saw, he didn't seem to have an answer for Dave.
It was the same. It was the same every time. And what the thing was, I think everybody kind of was guessing that, Trubin might have too much endurance and too many angles. Dave, if he can get his wrists in, it's pretty much over. That's pretty much what everybody was thinking, and I think that's pretty fair. The thing that nobody saw and that Dave double-crossed everybody on is that Dave got in the strap and his back pressure was way, way too much.
Yeah,
he could do nothing. Like, he just dragged him all the way across the table.
It was amazing.
And nobody expected that.
Yeah,
we expected Trubin to try to top roll and him crunch down, maybe, sure, but no, it was just pure drag.
So when are we seeing Chafee and Pushkar? Has this been?
I was just about to. Well, I don't know now because Chafee is one of the guys that has posted a picture of him with a WL hammer saying it's coming. So my guess is he's out of the PAL circuit, and that's why I brought up Pushkar and Kaplan, hoping that he might be, have the foresight to start bringing some of these guys over from, wherever, so they can compete with our guys. And that leads me to the question. I mean, I think you've seen Pushkar pull recently enough to have an opinion about how Chafee and Pushkar will go.
Well,
what do you think?
Before Chafee pulled Trubin, I would have said I don't see anyone in the world being able to beat Pushkar. Just because of the way that Pushkar managed Trubin in that last vendetta that I announced.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That was just, I mean, he just looked like an oak tree falling on him.
Yeah.
Watching the way that, look, both of those guys are too strong for me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we can speculate how, two unbelievably strong guys are going to do against one another just based on video and things that we've seen.
Sure.
I think that's the match to make. I mean,
it is.
Clearly.
I think it's a far. I think those two are.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty big gap between the next one too.
I think there is too. I think.
Todd can ruin anybody's day.
I think Travis in shape.
Yeah.
To use the parlance of our time, is probably right there with those guys. I would say that.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that.
But the thing is and it's one of the things I used to talk to Pete Milano about, and we tried to get a match together back when Jerry Caderet and Devin Larratt were 1 and 2, and we almost made it happen. That
would have been amazing.
You need to have the match happen while it's there. Someone has to do it.
Yep.
Someone's got to make the match happen.
Because you're right, it won't be here forever. One of them will get injured, or something else will happen, or some new person will emerge. This is the exact time to make it happen.
Yeah. It's like Mayweather and Pacquiao. That matchup happened 4 years too late.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
When everyone wanted to see it is when it would have been the best.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much the case right now with Dave and Pushkar.
Well, they're both. The cool part about Pushkar and Dave is that we had, to some extent, it's not that we were bad mouthing either of them, but it's like, they're really good at one thing, is what the story was about both of them. And both of them pulled out unexpected stuff in their last vendetta. I don't know if you saw the Pushkar match, but he actually beat Mike 3 times by pressing him.
I did see it. Yeah.
So it's like, he's doing things that people didn't expect to see, and so is Dave. So they've improved their ability to arm wrestle, as well as being probably 2 of the strongest guys on the face of the planet in our sport. So it just makes it all the more interesting.
And that happens. I think, kind of per what we were talking about before, you have the person who comes in who is just technically proficient almost from the start. They're like a sponge. I mean, everything you teach them, they get. And they're versatile and all these other things. Then you have people who are slow learners, but once they get it, they have it. Like, they really got it.
Sure.
And they might be a one-trick pony at first. Mm-hmm. But then after a while, they become a little bit more versatile. Mm-hmm. I heard people clowning on Dennis Simplenkoff, the way that he arm wrestles and stuff. And to be honest with you, and this is my opinion, watching him over the last, I don't know how many years, but the last incarnation of him against Michael Todd, he looked like a better arm wrestler. I mean, he looked like he had improved. He looked a little bit more versatile. So.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. He was a guy for a long time who just wanted to get his wrist in and drive sideways. And when he pulled Michael, he was really, his secondary move was side pressure. He was hanging out to get on those straps to make sure that Michael's hand dropped so he could get height. He wasn't falling for those tricks, and that takes patience and technique.
Here. Oh, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
And I said that takes a lot of patience and technique. You have to understand that and be calm about it, and that's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's being able to show poise. One of the things when somebody asks me about arm wrestling who's never done it before, I tell them, do something that's really hard for you to do, the heaviest weight you can manage, on a certain exercise, be stuck with that weight and then use your mind, be able to breathe, have poise, and then use your mind to change an angle. Mm-hmm. That's not easy to do.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're pulling a guy like a Michael Todd. I mean, it's very easy to panic, when he's not moving from a certain spot and start trying to do something, especially if you feel yourself wearing down. A lot of times the difference to me between an extremely strong amateur and a guy that starts doing really well in the open is their ability to kind of shift their body weight and change position without losing pressure in a positive direction.
True.
So, I mean, I think that's part of becoming a better arm wrestler for sure.
Yeah, and then, you add on all the mental stuff of it of, I've trained for 3 or 4 months specifically for this one thing. All this pressure, You know, your family's watching. There's cameras all over you. All these things, and it's now you have to do all this stuff calmly while that's going on. That takes years, a lot of experience, and a lot of dedication. So.
And I think there's a visualization involved in arm wrestling. I mean, at least for me, I always, if I knew somebody was going to be at an event, I visualized how I was going to beat them before I even pulled them. And if things don't go that way, you have to be able to adapt.
Yep.
You have to be able to adjust. Mm-hmm. There's going to be times where you think, well, so-and-so did this with this guy. I think I can do the same thing. I feel like I have a little bit more in that direction than so-and-so. And then you go into that position and you hit a wall. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And you have to have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's guys who on one side of the spectrum they train perfectly, they eat perfectly, they do all these things perfectly. Yeah. But maybe as soon as that's derailed, they have no answers, right? And then there's other guys who are just like, just let me on that table. I don't give a shit. Yeah. But they don't really train. But they don't train well. But they just don't. That they have competitive mindset and they're very edge. They have a good edge to them. And
100% right.
And if you combine those two things, where you do all those things right to the best of your ability, and then your plan A fails, but you go, I don't care. Give me plan B. Yeah. I have a whole alphabet. How many do you have? You know what I mean? I mean. That's what it becomes. It's where, I have the confidence that I can handle a bad situation worse or better than my opponent can. So throw the worst at us because I think I'll come out, through training and through whatever. I mean, that's when you get both. That's when you combine those two things. That's when, you get that guy who will go to the B side and win a good tournament and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I will say that in recent years, I've certainly enjoyed watching you arm wrestle, John. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule on some stuff, a little behind on schedule on some, but I'm focusing on the right stuff, being patient.
That's it. Patience. Yeah. It's celebrating any little increase that you make, any little, gain that you make. That's good.
Yeah, right now it's all about range of motion, no strength at all.
Yeah.
Because, because they're like, you can start doing strength stuff, but do you want to yet? And I said, well, what do you think? And they said, you have a window for range of motion to get it back. You can get strong 10 years later if you really want to, but you can't get your range of motion back in 10 years. So it's like, all right, well, let's just do it then,
Yeah. Maintain that range of motion. I tell guys that all the time. I mean, the internet is so full of half curls. It's silly. And I'm not saying there's not a place for it. There is.
Correct.
Especially in arm wrestling. I mean, if you're going to do a table curl, do a table curl. If you're going to do one of those curls Devon does, where you're locked and you're pulling over, I see a place for that, for sure. But also train full range of motion.
Yeah, you better open that joint up if you're going to close it like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I agree with that. That's why I was doing a lot of crap before I went to Worlds last year with just trying to get more and more weight on preacher curls and stuff like that. And I feel like the value of it was not worth the effort. I mean, I feel like the stuff I'm doing now with the extra climbing sessions instead of weightlifting, because it's full range of motion body weight stuff. So I feel like it's translating better. At least the results that I'm seeing on the table are better than when I was just lifting.
You go to any kind of grip competition, or do any kind of performing strongman stuff, the guys who tend to amaze you are the guys who used to be climbers or are active climbers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Stuff that they do. Like there's a guy right now from Texas. His name's Tanner Merkel, who is, he's off the charts with the stuff that he does. I mean, he's setting records way outside of his weight class, and he developed all of that hand strength being a world-class climber. So.
Yeah, there's guys like Chris Sharma and people like that who are doing one finger, one arm pull-ups on rocks outside above with 300 feet of nothing beneath them. It's like you wish you could get those guys on an arm wrestling table or in a grip tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
The power level is ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, I've been ignoring all these questions, James. We got to get some of these in. Let's see here. This is a good one because I didn't know about this match. Tommy just said that Travis has a right-handed match with Aslanov in Bolivia in August. How do you guys see that going?
I'm trying to think about how Asanov pulled at the Arnold.
With Dimitri?
Yeah, the way he pulled with Dimitri. Honestly, I'd probably see Travis beating him in the straps.
Yeah, that's a good bet.
I could see that occurring. How many matches is it?
This is a super match. Doesn't say how many.
Oh, it doesn't say how many? Okay. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Asanov got at least one win on him, though. Mm-hmm. Maybe even early. But no, I think after a while, I think Travis will probably outsmart him or outslick him in the straps.
Have you been following Travis's new league at all?
No, I haven't. I really haven't. I've been out of the loop. Sorry, guys. Once again,
all right.
Don't worry.
That's all right.
I'm just as far
it's
as
actually.
I just have a podcast. I don't have to know the news. I can just talk shit on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's actually fun having you not hear stuff because
I know. I usually gets broken to me on the show. I'm like, bro, Josh, tell me about that.
No, he's basically supposedly he got some town to pony up $125,000 that he's going to be handing out supposedly at this big tournament in Scottsdale, Arizona in the summertime. And he's basically mimicking the WAL format and rules, except that every match, the final event's going to be like a 16-man bracket of all the different weight class winners. So the two lightest guys will go against each other in a super match, and the two heaviest guys will go against each other in a super match. And then all the ones in between, and eventually it'll get down to the two people remaining. So it's all super matches straight through and by weight. So it's an interesting idea to try to equalize the playing field to a certain degree between the weight classes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting.
Good idea. Yeah.
$25,000 first prize, again allegedly. So that's what's going on with that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a great idea. Sounds like if he can deliver on the money, it'll be a big event.
Well, people have been talking about that a lot, James, about, there's been a few events recently that promised a lot of money that either fell through completely or partially. And Jerry Cataret posted, which I thought was really a good idea, that the money should be put in some kind of public account where everybody can see that the balance is there and present. So before you
agree.
Put up $2,000 to travel and stay in hotels and such, the money's really going to be there if you win.
One of the things that I always, insisted on was don't start setting up matches for money unless we know the money is there. We need verification that the money is there. Because, I don't know, I'm not one of those people that wants to under-deliver or not deliver on a promise because, every time this happens, somebody blames a sponsor or blames, and what happens when you start blaming? I mean, people start looking at you like you're not trustworthy.
Right.
If you're accountable and you say, look, I couldn't deliver, it's my fault, and you don't blame shift, people are going to be more likely to trust you in the future. But you can avoid that if you don't blame at all. And if you don't overpromise at all.
Yeah, and if you take accountability, I mean, accountability goes a long way with the individual, and and we gotta be honest, the sports are full of a bunch of individuals, just the way it goes.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no substitute for the tournament director or the organization that actually invests itself in the arm wrestlers' lives. I mean, I think one of the things that, Pete and Christian and I had going for us way back when was that, we were friends with all the people who were coming to our events. Yep. It was, they knew what to expect. These were people we spoke to on the phone frequently or interacted with on the board frequently. So, we were in the community. And I think that goes a long way.
Right.
I think a lot of times when guys come and they're flashing their money around, Of course, there's going to be a large percentage of the people are going to say, "Oh wow, I can fly out to Vegas and maybe be on TV and have a chance at winning, the money that Todd Hutchings is going to take home." Actually, but it's that lure. It fishes them in.
You're right about that.
Find is when something like this goes away, they always end up going back to the same people, the tournament directors that are consistent, the people that have always been there, the people that they know they can count on and trust because they've known them for a long time.
Yeah, and people end up going back to the directors and the promoters that, so happened to this past time with WAL went through, save the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, the people we trusted and kind of, I don't want to say abandoned, but a lot of people's numbers went down because of all that shit. And then they're the ones who came through and saved it.
Yep. Yeah.
People should be very thankful for the family that we have in this sport.
I'll tell you what else. They don't take it personally. They've got burned by this several times, and they still welcome everybody back when they come back. They don't be like, "Hey, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
You went chasing $5,000 around the country for 3 years, and we were here running events for that whole time, as we said with the amount of money we promised every single time." Like you mentioned about Bill Collins and the Beans and Denise and Leonard, people that we know are going to follow through, Steve Pettis, etc. You guys all know who the good promoters are.
And I've had fallings out with, I don't know, probably 70% of the people who you just listed. The difference is the reason I had fallings out with them is because we were both passionate about the same thing. Disagreed. It doesn't mean that, I look now and I realize that, those were the people who were dedicated to the sport. They had a different idea about it maybe, or about some things than I did. But they were the ones who were dedicated. They're the ones who are still there. They're the ones who endure. So.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I have like 65 questions I want to ask you about that, but I'm going to try. I'm trying to decide whether I want to do it or not.
Okay. Well.
I'm going to skip to one of these other ones that somebody else asked who was before me, because they asked even before you came on the show. And I think you answered this on your first show, but I'm going to ask it again because we get this every week, so it's good to hear your perspective on it. It's about table time frequency. It's from Mike Phillip, and he's what he says here is he feels like he read somewhere that you're big on recovery time for arm wrestling, and that you recommended table time once every couple weeks or so instead of doing it much more frequently. Is that still how you feel? And what's your general opinion on it?
Yeah, the more that I've invested in actual strength training programs, the more that I've realized that, soft tissue doesn't heal in time, you know what I mean, to arm wrestle even once a week. I think it's good at first to arm wrestle once a week, maybe even twice a week, until you become technically proficient. But when you're technically proficient, if your goal is to become stronger, you have to take some of that time to heal your tendons, train, actually make your body stronger, and then after you break down, rest, arm wrestle again. I've seen guys extremely successful on the table who train once every 2.5 weeks. So, but and John, I know you would disagree with this because you're one of those guys who would arm wrestle twice a day, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I necessarily disagree with it. I'm very open to that idea, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think, on every extreme, I think somewhere in the middle is usually where there's some kind of common. Because, I mean, I think some people were born with a certain amount of strength, and those guys break down easier because they put more force on themselves. And I think you get to a certain strength level where you start to destroy yourself a little more than the guy who isn't so strong, maybe. So
sure. One of the things that I realize is that, even with all the time away, I'm not as fast on the table. I don't train so much to have that kind of speed like I used to. But what I found is technically, other than a few things, I feel pretty much the same as I did before. And I can get on a table with somebody after not arm wrestling for 4 months and still feel pretty good. Technique-wise. I wear out a hell of a lot faster. I'm not trained for arm wrestling now, but I usually have 1 or 2 pretty good matches in me. and the technique is there.
Sure.
The endurance is not.
Uh-huh.
The speed is not.
Yeah, and to be completely honest about myself, I would pretty happily cash in some of my endurance for more strength.
Yeah.
If I have to be completely honest, I mean, it's cool to be able to pull forever and pull and pull and pull and pull super matches and keep getting stronger as you go, but I don't need it all. I don't need all of it I got. I would happily, if I could just trade a couple points here and there, like on Madden.
Why not give it why not give it 6 months? You know,
well, yeah, and to be honest with you, I am kind of planning on that once I'm healthy enough to really apply that.
And you know, get a board or get a journal and really track your progress in the different lifts that you get confidence from on an arm wrestling table. Find out what, you know, where your weaknesses are, and you know, gradually microload those weaknesses, whatever those movements are. And I think you'll find you'll improve a great deal on the table.
Right.
I'm liking the use of bands on off days from arm wrestling. I was just saying, we were talking to Krasi about this a few weeks back, and he was talking about using bands in arm wrestling motions on off days, just really light bands, just to rehab and also work the same muscles that you would on the table. I have to say that feels pretty good when I do that.
Yeah. One of the guys that I train with, Jason Otto, he does the same thing with bike tubes. You know, and he says it feels really good too. Not something I've done, so I really couldn't give you my perspective on that.
I say it's, my elbows feel healthier because I'm doing less of the really heavy weights and, like I said, relying on the body weight stuff. So I feel like, at my age, it's healthier way to train, at least for me this year. We'll see what happens next year.
Well, hey, I mean, so much of what we do tends to be experimental because we find out what works best for us eventually. Because sometimes what works best for us as an individual is not going to work, for somebody else. That, sometimes we'll train with people who will be like, wow, how did you get so strong? What are you doing? And we'll adapt our training to what they're doing, and we'll see ourselves actually do worse.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
So much I think of training in general is listening to your body, paying very close attention to what is helping, really tracking your progress and seeing how it trends, and continuing to train that way. Obviously, you want to have deload weeks now and again and hypertrophy phases, but you want to be able to find whatever it is that works for you. And like Devin Larratt said to me, ride the wave, but once that wave, comes to shore, you start plateauing, jump on a different wave.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to a lot of comfort. Because it becomes very comfortable once you're like, man, I'm getting better. All of a sudden you start to like whatever you're doing because it's comfortable. Especially once you get past that where it's not awkward, whatever you're trying to do. It doesn't really get you sore like it used to do. All those things, you start to get into this comfort where you're like, but you're still kind of in that mental place of like, well, I'm still getting better though. But are you though? Are you still getting better?
But it's almost kind of like a microcosm of life in other aspects that, our bad habits become comfortable. And it takes discomfort to break those habits. And when we're in a place of discomfort, we want to retreat back to what was comfortable, what was familiar.
I think that's a good point. I mean, that's the idea behind CrossFit. I mean, I think CrossFit's kind of stupid, but I do think that's a good idea of, changing up training frequently so that your muscles don't get used to the same thing over and over again.
I think CrossFit done right is not stupid at all. I think that there are people who benefit from it a great deal.
If you find someone who does CrossFit not stupid, I want you to let me know because I want to meet them. I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
But if you see it in practice, it's like it's asinine most of the time. I'm sure there are some
asinine, sure. But I do know people who've done CrossFit and have done really well with it. And, have stayed safe and injury-free. And, what they'll tell you is it depends very heavily on the box that you go to.
Right.
Who's training you. Because
my friend has one, and he has an Olympic weightlifting coach You got used to coach Olympic weightlifters doing his weights in his CrossFit box, so their stuff is on point. So clearly, I mean, Harold Owens is sending me like a question every 3 seconds for you. I'm gonna have to ask him.
Okay.
And by the way, I'll also just say that, you know, finding like the CrossFit box that's good is like, you know, good versus bad. It's all completely different. We're just talking about arm wrestling teams, right?
I know.
I mean, it's the same
We're
thing.
talking about the same thing.
Some of them are just like, some of them are just like smash and hurting people, and the other ones, you know, have like a real good, you know, structure. It's really no different, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very much the same. Yeah.
All right. First of all, Harold. Well, Harold just said hi in 3. He's sending messages that he wants to say hello in 3 different places. So I better get that out of the way.
Well, hi, Harold.
I guess he misses you. But his question is, what's your perspective on static holds and isometrics? Heavy or medium for time, he asks.
I'm one of those people where I'm going heavy for time. And the time I'm going to limit to 8 to 10 seconds. I think most of the research out there has said 8 to 10 seconds will give you the optimal gains. But with arm wrestling, and this is where I think it's tricky, is I think you can't just train that. I mean, we have to be trained in order to hold for longer periods of time. So I think where that would be optimal, training that if you're trying to gain strength. I think that there's also a place for doing more longer term holds, you know, like Bill Sinks, you know, some of his 5-minute stuff he'll do on the table.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue with Bill on something like that. I mean, he's had so much success. But I think overall, if you're going to get stronger, according to the research, you know, the primary what you want to use is 8 seconds to 10 seconds, 60 seconds to 90 seconds total time under tension. So, you know, it's a program that I certainly use for a lot of the grip lifts that I do, because so many of those are just picking something off of the ground once.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is very isometric in nature. You're not, like if you're grabbing, say, like you're pinching 2 plates, you know, it's not like you're doing this. You're not doing reps.
Mm-hmm.
You're pinching it. You're holding it. You've got to pop it off the ground, and you have to beat that initial pull of gravity, get it off the ground, and then hold, you know. And for me, I've seen the most gains, you know, doing those 8 to 10 second holds. And a lot of times I'll try to get, like I said, between 60 and 90 seconds total time under tension, which doesn't sound like a whole hell of a lot. But if you're using 85 to 90% of your 1 rep maximum to do that, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time under tension.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good answer.
Good.
Hey, yeah, I think I like that. I think, you know, I mean, one of the things that people, almost everybody that we interview who is a respected arm wrestler, adds statics in at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, it's like, you know, people go back and forth on whether you should be arm wrestling every day or once every 2 months or what have you, but the static hold seems to be a standard for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Aaron and Dion Lengel who used to arm wrestle a couple of times a day. And they were both very successful pullers from Canada. But one of the things that Aaron told me when I was talking to him was that they did a lot of slow, controlled movements. There wasn't a lot of hitting. There wasn't a lot of banging around because, you know, that's what would leave their tendons and their joints sore.
Mm-hmm. So, well, that's what when Bob Brown was on talking about how Brzezinski trained, that's what he said. He said, you know, they would arm wrestle every day and sometimes twice a day, but it was all like what you just described. It was never the kind of, you know, what we think about as practice. It's like, you know, it's like a mini tournament. Everybody's like ripping each other apart. Whereas what he was talking about is, you know, imagining you're using a hammer 8 hours a day, arm wrestle like that. So it's like minimal effort, but you're practicing the same motions and your muscles are getting stronger, your muscle memory is improving, and just the overall tendon strength improves, you know, dramatically over the course of 2 or 3 years of you doing that. But it takes some serious discipline to arm wrestle that way, since it's a sport where you're designed to compete with somebody and smash them. To not do that and to train every day in arm wrestling and not do that, it's got to be extremely difficult.
It is. It's you know, you have to reprogram yourself in a way. You know, it's just like, I mean, we have fun when we arm wrestle, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you guys have been to your share of 8 to 10 hour arm wrestling practices.
Sure.
You think those were beneficial in the long run?
No.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we were having so much fun. It was like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a little sore? Let's have a couple of beers. Then, the soreness goes away. Let's do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, probably not in the long run that beneficial. I always said, and I've been thinking a little bit more about this, about, coming back to arm wrestling in my mid to late 40s, maybe 5 years from now, after I've sort of achieved the feats of strength that I want to do. I think my sessions would be limited to 90 minutes to 2 hours if I came back to arm wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would have a completely different look and feel than the practices that I had before.
For sure.
So.
Well, let me ask you 2 questions about that. First of all, one from Corey that's related to your feats of strength comment. He wants to know if you happen to know what the world record one-arm bicep curl is, and is that one of the records you're gunning to break?
It depends on the actual curl.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's only been a few guys who've been able to legitimately back straight, do a standing curl without momentum over 100 pounds. Preacher curls, you're not going to find many that are legitimate over 110 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
One arm dumbbell curls. I was looking into doing the 100% raw, the drug tested powerlifting events. They have a strict curl event there. The difference between the numbers on the guys who are drug free and the guys who aren't is staggering. I mean, you're looking at like 100 plus pounds difference.
Wow.
So, but I don't think they really keep records for that. Mm-hmm. So it's not one of those lifts they really contest that much. There is an organization called USAWA, United States All-Around Weightlifting Association, that tests just about every lift that you can conceive of. And they hold records events a couple times a year. I have one of my friends, Scott Johnson, is really looking to start really getting involved in those. And another good friend of mine, James Fuller from up in Maine, he's got a whole bunch of their records. He's like an encyclopedia of training. He's a great guy. If you ever want to talk to somebody specifically about training who would blow your mind, James Fuller.
I'm going to write him down.
I don't know if that answers Corey's question. I hope so.
It did.
Okay.
Although you didn't say whether that was one you're personally chasing.
Well, I had my standing bicep curl at 96.4 pounds before my accident the other day. I had my preacher curl at 144.7 pounds. So, I certainly had a goal to have the strongest right bicep in the world in terms of measuring it with a dumbbell in different exercises. But that's been at least temporarily derailed, and I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm still waiting on an MRI. There's a very good chance that I won't be at that weight again, but I'm trying not to think that way.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that way. I know it's tough.
Well, I'm sure you understand.
I do.
Well, when you have an uncontrollable incident like a car accident, there's nothing you can do except wait and see. One of my friends is a singer, and she had a car accident, and her throat got pierced by a piece of metal, and she just learned, I think last week, that she is going to be able to sing again, but for a while they weren't even sure that she was going to be able to talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's just it's crazy. When you rely on something so much and then you injure it, it's incredible what an impact it has on your life. It's not something you even consider until it happens.
It has a huge impact on your quality of life, especially if, sometimes our life work is not what we do for an occupation. Sometimes our life's work is some other thing that we chase.
Frequently.
Yeah. And it's something we work, diligently at in our free time. And, for me, I'm a good 2 hours of hard training, every day before work. And that's part of my ritual, and it's part of what's really helped me, physically, psychologically. I mean, it's done so much for me, and I feel like I've learned more about life training and, microloading and being able to be patient and celebrate small successes. It's helped me, set goals in other aspects of my life and be patient with those. I mean, and there's been tremendous carryover. So when that's taken away from you, like it has been me, it's loss. I mean, you experience a sense of loss, and you just have to hope that you regain what you had.
Yeah, it's like kind of what we said before, where putting those bricks on one at a time, real straight, so that someday that wall can be great. But what you find out is once you're whatever the diagnosis is and all that, whatever has to be done, once you're at a point where okay, we can start coming back up now. It's the same thing.
Yep.
It's the same little brick. There might be littler bricks, but they're kind of bigger ones when it comes to life. Because I went from a place with my surgery anyway, where I mean before the surgery, shortly before the surgery, my quality of life wasn't that way I can. But I can put my arm behind my back right now. I can do a lot of stuff that I couldn't do 3 months ago. And it's like, man, those bricks, they might be little, but they were heavy.
They're going on straight, too.
I was unloading my dishwasher today, and I almost forgot about it. And I went to put a glass up, in a cupboard, and I just got this kind of pain. It was almost crippling. And, it's hard, but it's just, you have to find a way to cope with it. And look, I mean, no one who was at that accident site thought I should have lived through it. So if I get a chance to not only live through it, to at some point heal and regain even 80% of what I had, then I'll consider myself a lucky person.
Oh, for sure.
That's the right attitude. So let's assume that does happen, James. Let me bounce off your other comments you made. When you said you would think about coming back to the sport in your early 40s, in what mid-40s? Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
If you count 46 as early 40s, then I'm still in my early 40s too.
Well, that's about when I was thinking.
Yeah. So, in what context and in what venue and what format would you see yourself trying to come back?
I would want to win the best drug-tested event in the world.
That's a good goal.
And that would be the WAF.
And what weight would you imagine yourself competing at? Ideally.
87 or 98.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the 220s right now, but
yep.
I'm training for big boy feats of strength now. So,
right.
Being this weight is good for that. But I know that I can maintain much of my strength. There's this guy, Ricardo Magni, who's a grip athlete, who was talking about how he got stronger and lost 50 pounds. And, the way he described it was, using food as a weapon. And I'm certainly willing to do that. Find a way to lose the weight and continue to gain strength, really monitor my strength closely as I lose the weight.
Mm-hmm.
So, right now I can't even think about that. I mean, I got to think about whether my shoulder's going to be okay. So.
Well, I'm optimistic, man. I think you have the right mentality. If there's a way to bring it back, you will. You know, just like John. Yeah. As you said, I mean, it's such a, for all of us, it's a huge part of our lives. And when that's the case, and it's legitimately something that you do and look forward to every day, you do find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like Kano, the guy who founded judo, used to say whenever he got an injury, it gave him an opportunity to work on some weak area he had forgotten about or neglected. So that's the same thing that we have to do when we get injured. Something
Bob Brown said to me years ago, actually, really kind of resonated. He said, when you're hurt, train what isn't hurt. Still train. The trick is to not become sedentary and stagnate. You still have to train. So, I mean, I was really liking how my squat numbers were coming along. Oh, well, I'll have to, my left knee is pretty blown out. I'll work on right-legged pistol squats.
Right.
I'll use this time to have my left arm catch up to my right arm. I'll do grip lifts still, but I'll do them, with a crutch under my leg, and I'll lift them off a platform. I mean, it's not giving up. It's not just deciding that I can't do it. Not just saying, oh, wow, well, I'll just lay on the couch instead before work. Because that's I don't know. It's not my philosophy. It's not. To me, it's a victory to get out and do something.
Yeah, there's always work to be done.
Yeah. So.
And if you don't, that's when you start dying. That's when you start getting old. Is when you stop. Sure.
And you see trends in people's lives when you do the kind of work I do. And one of the things I've noticed is, not that people keep busy, but people who keep productive tend to be happy. It doesn't have to be productive in making money or manufacturing. It's productive, doing something that's working toward they tend to be happy. It's not instant gratification that they get from it, but it's that long-term thing that builds self-confidence and self-efficacy. People who pursue instant gratification tend to be the least happy.
It's a really good point. It just reminded me of something. I want to see what you think about this. If you're familiar with the sand paintings that some monks do, it tends to be on the top of mountains in places like Tibet, and it takes them, 6 or 7 months to finish one of them, and they're doing it 1 grain of sand at a time. So like an average, if you look at an hour, if you look at a day, the progress appears to be minimal. But over the course of the 6 months of the year it takes them to do it, then you see what the usefulness of it was, or what the purpose was behind it. And then when they finish, I don't know if you know about this, but when they finish it, the moment it's done, they just brush it all off and start over again. So they have 5-10 seconds to look at it, and it took them, you figured, 6 months to a year to complete this sand painting, which is usually about the size of the width of my arms. And they finish it and they just brush it away and they start over again. So it's I think about that when I think about our culture of instant gratification and also materialization. And it's imagine creating something that beautiful and then instantly destroying it and just starting over again. I mean, it's like weightlifting. Yeah. It's like arm wrestling. You can't rest in your laurels. You can't say, I've accomplished this, I'm done. You have to continue to grow and grow and grow. And it's like what John said with placing 1 brick at a time. And if your wall has 1 million bricks in it, even over the course of 3 or 4 months, you place thousands of them, and even if they're perfect, it still doesn't have a large impact when you're talking about a wall that's 300 feet long or whatever. But anyway, I just think it's cool. It's a cool concept to think about, that you're putting stuff together in such a slow and incremental process that patience and mental fortitude become the most important aspects of the entire process.
Well, and also to kind of, in a lot of ways, what James is kind of describing as well is the difference between motivation and discipline. Because motivation, when you're hurt like that and things hurt, you're not just injured, but every movement hurts. Just things hurt. Your motivation's pretty damn low because you're I don't really want to do much because everything hurts. But the discipline that you have in your life says, I got to go out and do something. I got to do some work. So motivation comes and goes, but if you can hold that discipline, it doesn't really matter. The motivation will come back.
Mm-hmm. I've had to be acutely self-aware of my moods since this accident. I mean, this thing was 3 days ago. 3 days ago, I'm rolling down a hill, just tumbling down a hill in an SUV, and got everybody and their mother telling me I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm in constant pain, and it sucks. But by the same token, I do feel grateful to be alive. I do feel grateful that I'm going to get a chance to recover. And maybe motivation isn't the word. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's discipline that keeps me moving. But discipline is about habits, right? And really, in our life, our habits they're what develop our character. It's the decisions we make over a long period of time to do the right thing. It becomes our character. So discipline is a good word for it.
Yeah, and that discipline can be that your mental discipline of every day, getting up and saying, what's the best in this thing? You know, because sometimes that's not our natural way of thinking. Sometimes our natural way of thinking is looking at what sucks. But if you're disciplined enough to stop every day and go, okay, what's good? You know, I'm pretty good. You know, I mean, 3 months ago, my arm was killing me. Today, it's really not that bad. You know, so it's, you know, sometimes it's hard to see that because, you know, it gets tough when you know, because people have good intentions and you know a lot of people. You know, I can't tell you how many people don't even mean to, but they come across so negative about it. Yeah. You know, there's been a lot of people like, oh, so you're done left-handed, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. But thanks for, you know, I've been trying to keep that out of my brain. And then, you know, it happened, then like the 101th person comes up and you try to be nice, but it's really hard.
But haven't you noticed at this point, though, no matter what your intentions, you have the greatest intentions in the world for people. There's always going to be somebody who dislikes you.
Of course.
There's always going to be somebody that, you know, has to be negative. And they all have, you know, different reasons for wanting to tear you down. Criticism is something that is really kind of it's something that we delve into a lot, you know, in my profession, because criticism when we're young has so much to do with our development of self-esteem. When we're, you know, really kind of rigidly criticized as kids, you know, we grow up with a lot of self-doubt. We don't feel like, you know, we've been validated effectively. Mm-hmm. So we seek validation. We're very insecure, right? But if someone gives us the right criticism when we're kids, and and they're builders, and they're there to build us up, and it's like, hey, look, you know they have good intentions for you. You know, like that one coach that would tell you what you did was garbage, but then they pull you aside and say, look, I'm going to get you better at this, and then next year you're going to show the other kids this.
Mm.
And
that's a really good point.
That encouragement is what builds up that self-concept.
It brings up an interesting point that this reminds me of. You know, you may have come across this research, James, that you know, if you tell a kid they're very smart over and over and over again, then when that kid runs into a problem that they can't solve immediately, it challenges their belief that they're really smart, and they tend to answer it quickly or shake it off and just say, "Oh, forget it, I was only playing around." Versus if you tell a kid, wow, you work really hard. When you come against a problem, you do whatever you need to solve it. Sometimes it takes you a long time, sometimes you do it quick, but you're such a hard worker, you always figure it out. And when that kid comes across a problem, they remember that they're a hard worker and that they're going to figure out a way to solve it.
It's not just affirmation, it's strategic affirmation.
Right, exactly. So,
yeah.
It's really interesting. Dude, sometimes I wish we had a 3-hour show because I think we could talk for that long, you know?
Okay, well, I'm sorry if we're going over, guys. I just haven't talked to you guys in a while.
Yeah,
we have to get you back here more frequently.
There's really no over, luckily. We're the bosses, too, so.
Well, let's go on. Let's split it.
Yeah, we should do that. We should have, like, you know, like remember that show, the Chappelle show, when he had like 15-minute periods with like various crazy people? We could do like 15 minutes with James. I think that'd be a good way to start the show.
I'm a crazy person.
Well, listen, man, keep us posted on the shoulder, and hopefully you get good news, and you'll be back at it in no time. And
I hope so.
yeah, maybe we'll see you at a tournament one of these days.
It's going to probably be a while now.
Well, you're always a good announcer and a good ref, too, so you have that. You have those tools.
I got a really nice call from Steve Stanaway the other day. He had heard about my accident, and he just put it in my ear that the sit-down nationals are coming up, and, you know, he needs an announcer. Just throwing that out, you know. I need an announcer. Just saying. You know.
If you know a guy.
If you know a guy, please do drop me a line. So, yeah, I announced it last year, and it was a really good event. And sit-down arm wrestling's, you know, it's interesting. It's definitely a completely different creature from stand-up, but, you know, it's fun. Matches tend to be longer.
Yep.
And sometimes the guys you don't expect to win, you know, they win. Mm-hmm. So it's cool.
Well, I would like to be there. I'm going to try to go this year because I used to do a lot of sit-down tournaments when I was a kid, and I probably would get my ass whipped now, but they were still a lot of fun. You know?
Yeah, they are fun. Yeah, I used to get my ass whipped on it too, and It's weird. You know, when you start to really develop a better hook, sit down feels a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you're like, whoa,
Okay. Yeah.
I can sit here for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, James. We're going to get you back on sooner rather than later. We waited too long this time.
All right. Well, I'm sorry I didn't answer the other people's questions.
Well, you know what? You can go on and check it on Facebook. There's a million comments, a million people saying hi, and I didn't get to all of them, but you can check that stuff out if you like.
I will do that.
All right.
All right, my friend. It was a lot of fun as always, and we'll see you much sooner next time.
All right. Love you guys. Take care.
Got it, brother.
Yes.
Adios.